Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I have a very interesting project. Behind me I actually have the 4Runner that I sold, and I sold it to this woman Cheyenne. Super nice, and she contacted me maybe 2 weeks ago and said she was having some problems with her idling. So I told her I'd take a look at it, and today I think I have a very interesting video for you. Okay, so the issue as Cheyenne described it was that she was having some revving issues. She said that when she turned on the car and it was just idling, that the RPMs would just shoot up without her doing anything. And right off the bat, my immediate suspicion was that she had a clogged IAC, or idle air control valve. Now, interestingly enough, the same problem actually happened on my 4Runner, and I just fixed it very recently, in fact. However, the symptoms on mine were that when I turned it on, instead of revving up high, it would actually rev low and sometimes even stall. So, how can one car have the same problem as another but have different symptoms? Let me tell you about it. So we're inside now on the whiteboard, and I'm just going to explain a little bit how this works so you can understand it, and then we can actually fix the problem. Here is my sloppy drawing of an idle air control valve, or IAC, as you'll probably hear it. There's basically a little channel way for the air to get through, so that when the throttle body is closed, there's still a little bit of air that can go through. So what'll happen is air is coming through, and there's this small little gap right here that basically controls how much air is coming through, thereby controlling how much RPMs the engine is idling at. What'll happen is, depending on cold and heat and different humidity and a bunch of different factors that it's reading from different sensors, this is the pivot, and this little valve will actually open up or close to control how much air is getting let through, and the air is gonna go through like that. What happens over the years is carbon starts building up. So there's carbon building up here, on the walls, and most importantly, there is carbon building up in here and between the valve that actually turns and pivots and the rest of the throttle body. And so at some point, now this is almost a 200,000 mile vehicle, there's so much carbon in here that it blocks this and basically sort of freezes this up so this can't actually turn. In the case of my vehicle, it shut it, so this was locked shut. So this little gap was too small so that when it was a cold day, the engine did not have enough air to actually idle and start. My best guess for this vehicle, for Cheyenne's 4Runner, is that this valve is actually getting stuck open. So here, it's getting stuck open like that. So now you have all this air that's getting through, and in fact it's too much air because that valve cannot close. So that's why it's revving high, because the motor is not strong enough to close this, and there we go. So that's my best guess as to what is happening with Cheyenne's 4Runner, is that valve is getting stuck open and letting too much air in. Now the job is pretty simple. All we have to do is remove the throttle body and the idle air control valve. That's all sort of one unit together, and then we just need some throttle body cleaner, clean that up, basically get all the carbon gunk off so that frees that little valve up, and we should be good to go. Let's quit the yapping and jump right into the job. Now here is what we're trying to get to. This is the throttle body, and of course you can see all the throttle cables going to it. And to get to this, we need to remove some of these tubes, this piping going to it, and then there's some bolts, cables, and a whole jumble of stuff. We're going to start by removing all these things here. So we have this little clamp. There's this little clip for the, what is it, I believe the mass airflow sensor. We're actually going to remove the sensor wiring harness. That just pops right off there. Okay. That wasn't so bad. And up here, remove all these hoses. Now also, one of the first steps I would recommend is to actually crank loose all these cables over here going to the throttle body, just like that. Now with those undone, we can actually come in here and remove those cables. We're on the side now, and we have these two clips. That's just going to come off, that wiring, and also up here. It's a bit tricky to do with one hand. There we go. There's also this tube that you're going to need to take off. It should just pop off like that. Now you can see on the throttle body, there's one nut, two nuts, and And then here's a bolt, and here's another bolt that's hidden behind there. Those are all gonna need to come off, and once those are cracked loose, the whole throttle body should be able to pull straight out. There we go. So I've gotten the throttle body sort of flipped on its side to hopefully show you here what's going on. Down here we have one hose, and that has a hose clamp. And then back on the other side, there's another hose with a hose clamp and a third hose without a hose clamp. Now I forget which hose is which. I think it is, these ones is a pass-through that actually has coolant in it. So be prepared, when you take one of those off, it is going to drip a little bit of coolant. So have a paper towel or some sort of thing to catch that. Once you've gotten your hose clamps off, you're gonna just need one of these tools, and it's just this little sort of hooked shape that'll be able to get under the hoses and sort of loosen them up so you can pull them off. I'll try to get as much shots as I can of this, but it's probably going to be hard to see, so yeah, just we'll see how it goes. Okay, so with those hoses disconnected, your throttle body should be free to come out. There we have it. Now we're so close to being able to clean everything up, but there's one last step, and that is to remove the idle air control valve, which is this piece here. Remove that from the throttle body. Now unfortunately, Toyota has just left us with these Phillips head screws. So if everything goes according to plan, this will just pop right off. On mine personally, one of these got stuck, so I ended up having to Dremel these out. So I'll show you a little tip with that in just a second, but first, let's see if these will come out. Okay, so there we have it, guys. We ended up getting super lucky, and all of these came out with not too much of a fuss. But these really do kind of suck for an application like this. I hate Phillips heads. So I ended up replacing these bolts, and I'll show you that when we put it back together. But for now, let's get cleaning. Guys, check out just how dirty this is. Hopefully you can see in there. I don't even know what that is. It almost looks like there's a piece of tape in there. That's on the coolant line. And then here is, this is actually that little valve that I was showing you on the whiteboard before, and it actually doesn't look too bad, which is a little surprising, but you can definitely see there's carbon buildup in there. And this is the throttle body, which it almost looks like there's a bit of oil in there. Carbon buildup for sure. Here's the back side of it. All right, now to do this, we have throttle body cleaner, and this stuff is pretty cheap. I just got this on Amazon. I think it was like 10 bucks, and this is a pretty big bottle. And I have paper towels, I have some cotton balls, but most importantly, I have these little guys, little Q-tips. I think these are gonna be our best tool. We're just gonna spray some throttle body cleaner in here, and of course in the IAC, which is the most important, and get to work. Idea what this is, but this was jammed in this pipe, so I don't think very much coolant was getting past here. Okay guys, so we've cleaned our throttle body and our IAC. Now these actually weren't quite as dirty as I was expecting, but there's definitely some buildup in there, definitely some sort of gunky stuff, so these are looking a whole lot cleaner now. To reassemble these, we'll need some new gaskets. Now here I have the IAC gasket. It's just a little rubber one, and I will link these both down below. We're not going to use this until we actually put the throttle body back on, but here is the throttle body gasket. There's the part number, and again, I'll link that down below. This one just sets right in there, and this will go back on here. Here is where I have the little tip for you about these screws. What I've gone ahead and done is, as you can see, here's the original screw. And this one is not stripped, but they do strip quite easily. So I went to the hardware store and got these little guys. They're the exact same thread. They're about the same length. I think they're a tiny bit longer, but they'll work just fine. I've tested it out on my own. And the best part is they have this hex head. It's an 8mm head, so you can just put a socket on that and that'll never strip out. So now with our new bolts, we're just gonna thread those in by hand and then snug them up and should be good to go. But check that out guys, here are the new bolts and those look so much better. They're nice and shiny. Like I said, they're stainless steel, so they will not rust, and best of all, they won't strip out because they're nice 8mm bolts. Alright guys, so we're back in the engine bay. Now at this point you can take off your old gasket and you can put on your brand new gasket. Just make sure to give this area a little clean. I've gone ahead and done that. So you have clean mating surfaces. Here we have our throttle body again. And at this point I'm going to connect up all of our coolant lines and all those hoses before we actually pop it back on. Our hoses are on. We can now rotate this into place. This seated just like that. Now we can go ahead and start putting our nuts and bolts back. Finally, to finish tightening them, I'm just going to use a wrench. I just have a much better feel than the drill. So here is the job complete, and once you're done with this, just do a once over, make sure all your hoses are connected, all your clips, everything's nice and tight. We're gonna pop into the cab and start it right up and see if everything is good. Make sure everything is smooth, and most importantly, if you're having idling issues before, see if those are gone. Okay guys, so as you can see, the truck started right up, no issues, and it's running super smoothly. One thing you'll notice, however, is the engine was revving a little bit high. If you run into an issue or it seems like the truck is revving higher than it normally does, that's totally normal. Basically the way these trucks work is that it actually has a little bit of a memory, and so as you're driving the truck, it's going to build up that memory on the position of the IAC valve and how far open that needs to be based on how you drive and all sorts of conditions. And basically that's a system put in place so that as the carbon does build up and as things wear down, it's going to adjust accordingly. However, if you do have that carbon buildup and suddenly all of that is taken away, obviously the computer is going to freak out. It's going to expect one thing and receive another thing. So to combat this, what we're going to do is basically just disconnect the battery. We're going to take off one of the terminals, take off the negative terminal, just let it sit for a couple seconds, plug it back on, and that way the computer is going to reset, the memory is going to reset, and it'll start from zero and basically relearn where that IAC valve needs to be. That's a little tip, but I think we're pretty much finished up. Well, that brings us to the end of the video, folks. So, job well done. The car is behind me and she's running super smooth. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was valuable and you learned something. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe. Go away, car. So, I think that's pretty much it. That's all, folks. See you next time.
That's all, folks.